Activate the emergency protocol. Now! Commander Isaac Vane's voice echoed through the Galactic Council chamber, sharp and commanding. The room stilled instantly as the members, initially caught off guard, scrambled to their consoles. His boots clicked against the polished floor as he strode forward, his eyes locked on the map of Earth and the advancing Zurax armada. Every second counted, and the Council's hesitation was becoming a dangerous liability. "We can't wait any longer!" Isaac snapped as the room hummed with the flicker of activating displays. His breath was steady, but his mind was a blur of strategies, calculations, and contingencies. The weight of Earth's fate hung on the balance, and the Galactic Council's reluctance to act threatened to doom them all. Counselor Drax, an old diplomat with a history of playing it safe, looked up, his hands trembling on his console. "Commander, he began, but Isaac cut him off with a raised hand, his tone unwavering. "Do not waste my time with more debate, Counselor. We need immediate action, or Earth will be gone by the time you finish another sentence." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of electronics and the soft clicking of keys. It was as if the entire galaxy had frozen, waiting for the Council to make a decision. But they were paralyzed by fear, uncertainty, and years of viewing Earth as a mere speck in the cosmic expanse. Insignificant, powerless, a planet too small to challenge the might of the galactic powers. "I don't understand," Counselor Vare finally spoke, his voice hesitant, bordering on disbelief. "Earth is unprepared. How can you expect them to face the Zurax? They're a force the galaxy hasn't seen before." Isaac turned sharply to face Vare, his expression hardening. "The Zurax made their mistake by underestimating us. We may be young, but we have the will to fight, and the Council will support us, whether you like it or not." A low murmur rippled through the room. Some of the Council members nodded reluctantly, others seemed lost in their own thoughts. But Isaac's words had struck a nerve. The realization was sinking in. They were out of time, and Earth would have to stand on its own, for better or worse. "The Zurax will not wait for us to decide," Isaac continued, his gaze shifting to the holographic display of Earth, surrounded by the glowing trajectory of the Zurax fleet. "They're already within range. We need all forces prepared for immediate deployment." Vire, still trying to cling to diplomacy, opened his mouth to argue, but Isaac didn't give him the chance. "Do you want Earth to be another conquest, another planet erased from the stars? Because if we don't act now, that is exactly what will happen. You want to rely on other fleets? Fine. But Earth needs our support now." Isaac's voice rang out like a verdict. The threat was undeniable, and the urgency was clear. The Council had no choice but to acknowledge the gravity of the situation. Counselor Theros Vare hesitated, his hands shaking as he reviewed the reports. "You're asking for more than just support, Commander. You're asking us to back a war we're not prepared for. What if this is a trap?" Isaac's gaze never wavered. "Then we'll adapt. But we will not wait to be erased. I will take full responsibility for this mission, but Earth will not fall under your watch." There was a heavy pause. The Council chamber had always been a place of indecision, of politics and diplomacy. But now in this moment, it was a place of cold reality. Vare glanced at Drax, who simply nodded, his face resigned. The Council was too fragmented to remain in their usual paralysis. "Prepare Earth's defenses," Isaac commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. "No more delays." The words hit like a hammer. The Council was at a crossroads. Earth's fate was no longer in their hands. It was in the hands of a commander willing to fight for survival. Isaac turned to the holographic map, his mind already racing through the necessary military strategies. The first wave of defense needed to be in place immediately. The Zurax would not hesitate, and neither would Earth. "Get me the fleet, now!" Isaac's voice was a clear-cut order. His finger jabbed at the air, activating communication channels. "This is not just a battle for Earth. It's a fight for the future of this galaxy. We will not let the Zurax decide our fate." One by one, the members of the Council began to stir, the weight of Isaac's words sinking in. But even as they rallied behind the decision, the reality of their choice settled like a cloud of doom. They had underestimated Earth, and now they would either fight alongside it or face the consequences. The Council session ended with a lingering air of doubt, but Isaac's decision was final. The door slid open, and he moved swiftly through the chamber, his footsteps echoing off the metallic walls. As he walked, he felt the weight of command settle over him. There was no turning back. The Zurax were coming, and Earth had just become their target. He stepped into the hallway where his second-in-command, Lieutenant Arik Reth, was already waiting. Arik gave him a sharp nod, his expression unreadable. "The council agreed," Arik said quietly, his voice a steady contrast to the chaos of the meeting. "They had no choice," Isaac replied. "Now we make them regret their doubt." The sound of boots clanging against the metal floor echoed in the hallway as they moved swiftly to the command center. Isaac's mind raced through tactical plans. There was little time, but if they acted swiftly and decisively, there was still a chance. "Commander," Arik began, his voice measured, "the Zurax will reach Earth in a matter of days. We need to deploy our forces now." Isaac's jaw tightened. "And we will. Prepare the fleet for immediate action. Earth will fight back. And when the Zurax see our resolve, they will understand that Earth is not a pawn. It's a force to be reckoned with." As they continued toward the war room, Isaac glanced up at the stars visible through the viewport, the stars that had once seemed so far away, so disconnected from Earth's fate. Now they were a reminder of the stakes, a reminder of the lives that depended on the choices being made in this very moment. And in the distance, he could see the faint glow of the Zurax ships moving closer. "Activate the defense grid," Commander Isaac Vane ordered, his voice clear as he stood before the massive strategic map projected on the heads-up display. His eyes traced the paths of the incoming Zurax fleet, already visible on sensors, the cold light from the display reflecting off his sharp features. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. Earth's survival hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. The room around him buzzed with urgency, officers moving quickly, their footsteps punctuating the atmosphere. The sharp, mechanical click of data pads echoed as they updated status reports. Isaac's fingers hovered over the map, adjusting fleet positions. There was no room for error, no time for hesitation. The Zurax were known for their brutality, and this was not a situation for diplomacy. It was one of sheer tactical survival. "Commander, the first wave of defense drones is ready." Lieutenant Arik Reth's voice cut through the murmur of the war room, steady but laced with concern. He stood at Isaac's side, his eyes fixed on the display, waiting for the next move. Isaac didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Deploy them. Target the Zurax's lead vessels. Delay their advance." His tone was low, tactical, but there was an edge of urgency that even his second-in-command could hear. Arik nodded and immediately relayed the order. Isaac felt the tension building as the war room came to life, officers and technicians working in synchronized chaos. Each command Isaac issued was a step closer to what would either save Earth or see its destruction. His mind raced through contingencies and backups. The galaxy's attention was now on Earth, and no matter the outcome, their place in the universe would be altered forever. "Is the planetary defense shield operational?" Isaac asked without turning. "Yes, Commander," came the quick response from General Neil Carver, Earth's head of military operations. "But we can only hold for so long. The Zurax fleet will be upon us in hours. The shield can delay them, but it won't be enough if they push too hard." Isaac's jaw clenched. He had anticipated this. The shield was only a stopgap. The real battle would come when the Zurax tested Earth's resolve. That's when the true strategy would unfold. "Continue reinforcing the shield, but prepare for the worst. I need our fleet ready. Mobilize all available ships, including the defense station at Mars," Isaac ordered. The urgency in Isaac's voice was not lost on anyone. His command was absolute, precise, but the pressure of leading humanity's defense against a galactic empire was beginning to take its toll. Each decision weighed heavily on him, but there was no room for doubt. His mind had already turned to the next step, analyzing every move the Zurax could make. "The Zurax are underestimating us," Isaac said, his voice quieter now, more contemplative. He stepped back from the display and faced the officers. "They think Earth is an easy target. They believe they can destroy us without effort. We will make them regret that belief." His words were not merely for the room, they were a statement to the galaxy itself. Isaac Vane was not just preparing for war. He was preparing to prove humanity's strength, not through sheer force alone, but through tactical brilliance. "Sir, the Allied forces are en route," Arik reported, breaking Isaac's thoughts. "The Velic fleet from Beta Serpentis is 2 days out, and the Archaeal Alliance will arrive in 4. Isaac nodded, glancing at the map again. He had just enough time. Earth's allies, though not enough to match the Zurax in raw power, could be the turning point. Earth had always been dismissed, forgotten in the grand schemes of galactic warfare. But Isaac knew better. If Earth's forces could hold long enough, they could turn the tide. His mind raced with strategy, each piece falling into place. Send word to the Velic and Archaeal fleets. Tell them to prepare for a defensive formation around Earth. "They'll be our line in the sand," Isaac ordered. He stepped away from the map, moving toward the communications hub where officers were stationed. His boots clicked steadily on the metal floor, each step echoing with the weight of responsibility. His eyes briefly flickered to the viewport, where Earth hung like a fragile jewel in the endless black. The blue of the oceans, the green of the continents, now threatened by the shadow of the Zurax. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," an officer called out, breaking the brief silence. Isaac turned, his focus shifting. "Patch it through." The screen in front of him flickered to life, and the image of Counselor Vare appeared. The Galactic Council was the last group to offer humanity any real support, and Isaac knew this call was nothing more than formality. "I hope you've made the right choice, Commander," Vare said, his voice strained. "Earth's position is complicated. We don't have the forces to spare, and many on the Council feel this could lead to a galaxy-wide conflict." Isaac's gaze hardened. "You've already decided to stand behind us, Vare. Now let's make sure Earth survives long enough for you to justify that decision." There was a long pause, the weight of Isaac's words hanging in the air. Vare shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware of the situation's gravity. "I'll inform the Council of your decision, but do remember, Earth's fate isn't just in your hands. This will affect us all." Isaac's eyes narrowed as the screen blinked off. The Council had made their choice. Half-heartedly, but they had chosen Earth. Isaac wasn't concerned with their doubt. He was focused on what came next. "General Carver, status on the fleet?" "They're preparing to deploy, Commander, but we'll need time to organize them effectively," Carver replied. His tone was practical, though it carried the undercurrent of pressure. "Time isn't a luxury we have," Isaac muttered under his breath, before turning toward the war table again. "Deploy the first wave of interceptors. They'll delay the Zurax advance until we have more forces in position." "Sir," Arik spoke up again, "we've also intercepted communications from the Zurax fleet. They're coordinating with something or someone behind their lines. We've detected a faint signal, but it's too scrambled to interpret." Isaac's eyes lit with curiosity. "A hidden hand, or just a diversion?" "Unknown, sir," Arik replied, "but I'll keep the team on it." Isaac's mind worked quickly, absorbing the new information. A diversion? A hidden enemy? He had to prepare for anything. "Continue monitoring," Isaac ordered. "Whatever the Zurax are planning, we'll be ready for it." With a deep breath, Isaac faced his officers. "Let's be clear. Earth will fight not out of desperation, but out of necessity. We won't be swept aside. We will show the galaxy our strength, not by matching the Zurax in force, but by outthinking them. Prepare for everything." As his officers moved to execute the plan, Isaac's thoughts turned inward, but there was no time for reflection. Every decision he made could mean the difference between survival and destruction. The Zurax were coming, and Isaac Vane was ready to lead Earth's defense with everything he had. Isaac Vane stood at the edge of the war room, eyes fixed on the laser plasma displays as the data streamed in with deadly precision. The Zurax armada, once a distant threat, now loomed just outside Earth's atmosphere. Their ships, massive and intimidating, flickered in red as they neared Earth's orbit. He could feel the cold steel of the command center press against his chest, each breath a steady reminder of the weight of the moment. "Deploy the first wave," Isaac commanded, his voice cutting through the growing tension in the room. The officers around him moved swiftly, their hands dancing across control panels, fingers tapping commands into their consoles. The room hummed with the energy of preparation, but Isaac knew this was only the beginning. What they were about to face was far beyond anything they had encountered. Eric Reth, Isaac's trusted second-in-command, moved next to him, scanning the incoming data. "The first wave is out, Commander. Interceptors are in position, but the Zurax are advancing faster than expected. They're almost in range of the outer defenses." Isaac's jaw tightened. "Keep the interceptors in formation. We need them to stall, not engage fully. The Zurax aren't here for a skirmish. They want Earth. We can't afford to give them that satisfaction just yet." Eric nodded, relaying the order to the fleet commanders. Isaac's mind raced with the calculations, thinking through every possible scenario. This was the moment where Earth would either rise or fall. It wasn't just the defense of Earth at stake, it was humanity's place in the galaxy. He could feel the growing weight of it pressing against him, but he would not allow doubt to show. Not now. "Commander," General Neil Carver spoke, his voice steady, but with an edge of concern. "The planetary defenses are online, but they won't hold against the full force of the Zurax fleet for long. They're overwhelming. We need a stronger response." Isaac turned toward him, his expression unwavering. "We don't have the luxury of time. Hold the line as long as you can. I'm counting on you to keep the fleet intact. We buy time. That's our only goal right now." The room was silent for a moment as Carver absorbed the order. He nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. Isaac turned back to the laser plasma display, his fingers hovering above the console, tracing the path of the incoming fleet. It was a perfect storm, a test of every ounce of preparation they had done in the last days. "Isaac, we've got a new signal," Arik interrupted, his voice tight with urgency. "It's coming from the Zurax fleet. They've activated their secondary carriers. Looks like they're deploying heavy artillery." Isaac's brow furrowed. "They're going for a direct hit. No surprises then. Time to turn the tables." "Sir, Earth's outer shield is at full capacity, but the Zurax will tear through it," Carver warned. "We need to think outside the box here." Isaac's mind clicked into overdrive. "All ships on standby. Full power to the shield generators. Prepare the second wave of drones. We will make them regret underestimating Earth." "Yes, Commander." Carver's voice was resolute. As the first wave of Earth's defenses took position, Isaac's gaze flickered over the map once again. The Zurax were too close. They would make the first strike soon, and their weapons were capable of devastating entire cities. The incoming fire would test everything, but Isaac wasn't going to let them have the first move. "Activate the defense grid," Isaac ordered, and the room sprang into motion once more. This time the tension was palpable. Sensing the quiet chaos building, the officers worked furiously to ready the countermeasures. Isaac could feel his pulse steady, his mind clear. There was no time for hesitation. The low hum of the defense systems filled the air, a reminder of the intricate machinery now working in tandem with human ingenuity. Isaac's gaze locked onto the display where Earth's vast surface was divided into sectors, each now being shielded by the best they had, Earth's final line of defense. Isaac knew they were not ready for the full might of the Zurax, but they had no choice. This was it. "Launch the drones," Isaac ordered once more, the words firm, almost final. Earth was no longer waiting to be attacked. The first volley of drones shot from Earth's surface, streaking across the dark void. Their tiny forms whistled through space, their mission clear: to buy time, to disrupt the Zurax's overwhelming advance. Isaac's eyes flickered across the monitors, tracking the enemy's response. The Zurax didn't hesitate. Their weapons flared, launching massive beams of energy toward Earth's defensive shields, attempting to cut through the first wave of drones. But Isaac had anticipated this. The drones weren't designed to survive. They were designed to test the Zurax's precision. "How many drones are we losing?" Isaac asked, his voice calm but urgent. 60%, Commander," Arik replied, his voice steady but with an edge of concern. "They're adapting faster than we expected." Isaac nodded. "Expected, but not fast enough. Continue with the countermeasures." The Zurax, clearly taken aback by Earth's unexpected defense, began to reorganize, their massive ships slowly altering course as they took in the rapid destruction of the first wave of Earth's drones. Isaac's plan was working. They were not going to roll over quietly. Another blast of energy from the Zurax hit the outer shield, and the room was filled with a sharp, vibrating thrum As Earth's defenses took the full force, the shield flickered but held firm. Isaac clenched his jaw. "Hold it together," he muttered to himself, eyes still locked on the display. The Zurax were relentless, but so was Isaac. He watched as the outer shield absorbed another direct hit, the bright flash lighting up the room. The tension in the room built to a fever pitch. Isaac stood motionless, feeling the weight of every second. The first wave of Zurax ships began to break formation, a subtle shift that Isaac immediately caught. They were trying to overwhelm Earth with sheer firepower, hoping to break through the defense lines. But Isaac's eyes were already moving to the next step, calculating the moves ahead. "Ready the second wave," Isaac said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. The room reacted instantly, but Isaac didn't wait for the inevitable explosion to shake the chamber. He knew the next phase would be their defining moment. The ground beneath his feet vibrated, a subtle reminder that the battle had only just begun. But Isaac's resolve was stronger than the pressure mounting all around him. He wouldn't let Earth fall. "Prepare for their next wave," Isaac muttered. The first signs of the Zurax's aggression were here, and Earth's fight for survival had truly begun. The screens in front of him showed Earth's defenses holding, barely, but they were holding. For now, that was enough. The Zurax had made a mistake. They'd underestimated Earth. Isaac had every intention of making them regret it. "Deploy the interceptors now!" Isaac Vane's voice cracked through the command room like a whip. The Zurax armada was within range, their massive ships hanging in space, blackened silhouettes against the cold backdrop of the stars. His fingers danced over the heads-up display as he tracked their progress. Every move a step closer to Earth's demise if they failed to act swiftly. The room erupted into motion. Officers scrambled to execute commands, technicians tapping into the defense grids, deploying interceptors, and activating the laser plasma missile batteries. The tension in the air was electric, charged with the frantic urgency of imminent battle. Isaac's mind raced, adjusting their strategy on the fly, knowing every second counted. "First wave of interceptors are away," Lieutenant Reth reported, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. "Targeting Zurax command ships. Ready to fire on your mark." Isaac stared at the approaching fleet, every muscle taut with anticipation. The Zurax were ruthless. He knew they wouldn't hesitate to strike first. They had to make their stand now. "Fire!" Isaac ordered, his voice carrying the finality of a command that could either save or doom Earth. The room shook with the roar of missile launches as Earth's first line of defense surged into the void. Bright flashes from the interceptors cut through the darkness like deadly comets, streaking toward their targets with deadly intent. Isaac's eyes never left the screens, watching the battle unfold before him. Explosions blossomed as the interceptors made contact with the Zurax ships. The initial blast sent shockwaves rippling through space, momentarily lighting up the cold vacuum with fiery brilliance. Isaac felt a small flicker of hope. They were doing it. They were fighting back. "Direct hits on the Zurax front line," Arik reported, the relief in his voice barely masking the urgency. "We've knocked out their lead ships, but more are coming." Isaac's heart pounded. The first wave had been successful, but this was just the beginning. They had destroyed the Zurax's initial push, but they would not stop. Isaac's mind raced through the next steps, analyzing the shifting battlefield. The Zurax would regroup, adapt, and strike back harder. He had to be ready for it. "All units, fall back to secondary positions," Isaac barked. "We're not letting them take the initiative again. Set up decoys, activate the traps." The battle had only just begun, but Earth had already made its mark. The Zurax would know that humanity was not to be underestimated. Isaac could almost hear the Zurax commanders growling in frustration as their first wave crumbled. "Secondary defenses are online," Carver reported, stepping forward, his tone more serious now. "We've prepared the electromagnetic pulses as a last resort, but it's risky. We won't get another shot if it doesn't work." Isaac nodded sharply, his gaze still locked on the laser plasma displays. "We don't have a choice. If the Zurax push forward, we'll need every weapon we've got." Suddenly, the screens flashed red. Isaac's breath hitched. The Zurax were regrouping faster than expected. A new wave of ships appeared, larger and more coordinated, their weapons primed and ready. Isaac's hands tightened into fists. They were coming in force now. "Prepare the EMP," Isaac ordered, his voice a steady force of authority. "We need to take out their long-range artillery. If we don't, we'll lose Earth before we have a chance to strike back." The room hummed with the urgency of the moment. Isaac could feel the pressure of the battle closing in around him, but he pushed it aside. This was what he had trained for. This was where he thrived. Every decision now would carve Earth's path forward or seal its fate. "EMP activated," Arik reported, "targeting Zurax artillery." The EMP wave shot through space like an invisible pulse, disrupting the Zurax ship's systems. A brief, ominous silence settled over the command room as the waves of energy hit their mark. The first explosion was followed by a series of cascading blasts across the Zurax fleet. The Zurax were stunned, their long-range artillery faltering, their ships momentarily crippled. Isaac leaned in, watching as the display showed the Zurax ships struggling to recover. "That's it. Now hit them with everything we've got." The ground under Isaac's feet vibrated as the secondary wave of Earth's missiles launched, their trails of light slicing through the vacuum toward the vulnerable Zurax ships. The impacts were devastating, bright flashes of destruction as Earth's defense systems unleashed their fury. "Direct hits," Arik called out, his voice firm. "We've neutralized most of their artillery and taken down 2 of their heavy cruisers. The Zurax are pulling back." Isaac allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction, but he didn't let his guard down. He knew this victory was only temporary. The Zurax were not going to retreat for long. He turned to Carver. "Get the fleet into position. We don't let them regroup. This battle is far from over." But just as he spoke, the Zurax fleet began to regroup. Their retreat was short-lived. Isaac could see it on the displays as the Zurax shifted their formation, now tighter, more coordinated. The momentary victory had emboldened Isaac, but the enemy was far from finished. "They're coming back at full force," Arik said, his voice taut with the strain of the situation. "The Zurax are adapting. They've regrouped. It won't be long before they launch another offensive." Isaac's mind raced, shifting gears instantly. He turned to the tactical officers and gave them their new instructions. "Prepare for the second wave. Do not underestimate them. This battle is about to get worse before it gets better." Isaac's eyes flickered to the display again. The Zurax ships were closing in, this time with more artillery, more firepower. But Isaac wasn't intimidated. They had scored a significant blow. Earth wasn't out of this fight, not yet. "Launch the next phase," Isaac ordered, his voice firm with the weight of command. "We're going to show them what humanity is capable of." As the battle raged on, the room pulsed with energy. The first wave had been won, but Isaac knew the fight was only beginning. The Zurax were relentless, but so were they. Earth's defenders would fight on, no matter the odds. The flashes of missile impacts lit up the vastness of space, a bright reminder of the battle unfolding. Isaac watched as Earth's defenses held firm, knowing that every moment brought them closer to either victory or destruction. His thoughts sharpened, each decision an edge that would either defend their world or leave them vulnerable. "Continue pushing back. This ends with us standing victorious," Isaac said, his voice cold and resolute. The Zurax may have underestimated humanity once, but they would not make that mistake again. "Get me that signal." Isaac Vane's voice cut through the tension in the command room, razor sharp, as he stood over the heads-up display, eyes locked on the patterns of movement in space. The Zurax were adjusting their formation again. Isaac had anticipated this. Their first wave had been shattered, but he knew the true test was yet to come. He needed to act fast. "Commander, the fleet has started to regroup," Lieutenant Arik Reth reported, his fingers flying over his console. "They're consolidating their forces, but there's something unusual. We've intercepted a transmission from their rear command." Isaac turned sharply. "What's the message?" Arik's brow furrowed. "It's scrambled, but I can make out something about a rift. Dissent among their commanders. There's a split forming in their ranks." Isaac's heart skipped a beat. A crack in the Zurax's armor. This was the break he needed. "Decrypt it. Now!" As the command center buzzed with activity, Isaac's mind raced. He'd planned for the worst, but this was unexpected. The Zurax, despite their overwhelming firepower and ruthlessness, were beginning to falter. This internal discord could turn the tide, but only if he could exploit it. Earth's limited resources weren't enough to crush the Zurax head-on, but with this new intelligence, Isaac could outmaneuver them. "Sir, the signal is being decoded," Arik said, his voice tight with the strain of processing the encrypted data. "They're speaking about a faction within the Zurax forces questioning the invasion. Some commanders want to abandon the attack, fearing it's doomed. They're not unified anymore." Isaac's lips curled into a brief, grim smile. The Zurax were just as vulnerable as any other species. They had their fractures, their weaknesses. Isaac's task was to exploit that vulnerability before it could be closed. "Print out the full report. We'll use this." Isaac's voice was resolute. "Keep monitoring their fleet movements. I want to know if this split leads to anything actionable." Turning away from the display, Isaac paced the room, eyes flickering over the various maps of Earth's defenses, the schematics of the fleet. There was no time to celebrate this victory. The Zurax would adapt, just as they had before. He had to move quickly. "General Carver, what's the status on the EMP systems?" Isaac asked, his voice measured, focused. Carver, standing by a separate console, didn't hesitate. "They're ready, Commander. The Zurax fleet is concentrated in one area. We can hit them hard with a targeted EMP, knock out their electronic systems, and disrupt their formations." Isaac nodded. It was risky. An EMP strike would cripple the Zurax's weapons, but it would also leave Earth vulnerable if the Zurax quickly regrouped. Still, it was their best shot at breaking their resolve. "Prepare the EMP. Wait for my signal." Isaac turned to the tactical officer. "I need our interceptors ready to engage as soon as the EMP hits. We'll follow up with a direct assault." Arik's eyes locked with Isaac's, a shared understanding passing between them. The next few minutes could either cripple the Zurax or ignite their fury. Isaac wasn't willing to take the chance that the Zurax would take another step toward total annihilation. "Understood," Arik said. "It'll be ready." The room fell into a focused stillness as the team prepared for the strike. Isaac stood motionless, his mind turning over every possibility. This counterattack was their chance to keep the Zurax off balance. But if the Zurax recovered quickly enough, this brief victory could lead to nothing more than a temporary delay. Isaac couldn't afford to make a mistake. "Commander," Carver spoke again, this time with a tone of caution. "We've detected increased chatter from the Zurax. They're organizing. This might not be the moment we thought. They could launch a retaliation." Isaac's eyes narrowed as he weighed Carver's words. It was no surprise. The Zurax were formidable, and the rift among their ranks might not hold for long. He had to act now, decisively. "Fire the EMP." His voice was calm, but there was no hesitation. The choice was made. Earth had to act, or it would be too late. The room shook slightly as the EMP surged outward, a wave of invisible energy rippling through the void, aimed directly at the Zurax fleet. Isaac watched the heads-up display with a sharp focus. The screen flickered briefly as the Zurax ships lost power, their lights dimming, their weapons systems shutting down in a flash of chaos. "Direct hit," Arik confirmed. "Their front lines are temporarily disabled. They're scrambling to restore systems." Isaac wasted no time. "Launch interceptors. Hit them while they're disorganized. Target their flagship. If we take that down, we destabilize their whole operation." The first wave of interceptors screamed through space, their weapons locked on their targets. Isaac's heart beat faster as the explosions lit up the Zurax fleet. Each impact was a small victory, but it was still too early to call it a win. The Zurax were not a species to bow down easily. The explosions rocked the Zurax formations, sending several ships into disarray, their shields failing in quick succession. But Isaac didn't let up. He knew the Zurax were regrouping, preparing to strike back with even more fury. "Status on their regrouping?" Isaac asked, turning to his tactical officer. "They're holding for now," the officer replied, "but their fleet is already starting to recoordinate. They won't be down for long." Isaac clenched his fists, feeling the surge of adrenaline mix with his thoughts. They had a brief window of opportunity, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. "Prepare the fleet for a second wave. I want every ship mobilized. We'll use their momentary confusion to hit them harder." His mind was already moving ahead, anticipating the Zurax's counterattack, preparing his forces for the next move. Earth had to stay ahead, constantly on the offensive, never allowing the Zurax a chance to recover. The Zurax were formidable, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity. As the first wave of interceptors tore through the remaining ships, Isaac watched closely. The Zurax were reassembling, but it was taking longer than expected. The internal rift had disrupted their organization more than anticipated. For the first time, Isaac saw true uncertainty in the enemy's movements. "General, redirect our fleet to cover the western quadrant," Isaac said. "We'll split their forces and keep them disoriented." "Understood," Carver responded immediately, moving to implement the orders. The Zrax were regrouping, but this was not a time for fear. It was a time to strike, to solidify Earth's presence in the galactic theater. Isaac could feel the weight of every decision, every command. Each second mattered, and he wouldn't let Earth be caught off guard again. As Isaac stood watching the chaos unfold, his mind worked on the next move, but there was a sense of growing confidence. They had made their mark, and the Zurax were no longer the unstoppable force they had once appeared to be. This fight was far from over, but Earth had shown the galaxy it was capable of far more than they had ever imagined. "Commander, we've got an unexpected transmission coming in." Eric Reth's voice was measured but tinged with disbelief. Isaac Vane didn't hesitate. He snapped his head toward the communication station, eyes narrowing. He hadn't expected anything new. Earth was already engaged in one of the fiercest battles in its history, and the last thing he needed was another variable. "Put it through," Isaac ordered, his voice tight, his pulse steady but quickening as the seconds stretched. The screen flickered to life. The static that had momentarily clouded the image disappeared, revealing a sleek black ship, an unfamiliar design, unlike any species Isaac had ever seen. Its surface seemed to shimmer, almost blending with the vacuum of space, leaving a sense of something otherworldly. The vessel hung at the edge of the Zurax fleet, a stark anomaly in the chaos of war. A voice filled the room, cold and precise, yet carrying an unspoken weight. "Commander Isaac Vane, I am Sovereign Shrakthar of the Freebounds. We have been observing your conflict with the Zurax. We offer you our assistance." Isaac stood frozen, his mind racing. His first instinct was to dismiss it. Another faction trying to manipulate Earth. Another player in a game Isaac didn't want to be part of. But desperation was a potent force, and Earth was at its mercy. "Sovereign Thar," Isaac said, his tone measured. "I'm listening, but I'd advise you to get to the point. We're fighting for our lives down here." The voice on the other end didn't waver. "We know, and we believe your chances are slim without new allies. The Zurax are a formidable foe, one that has already cost us dearly. You're not the only species they've targeted, but you, Commander, are fighting with something the Zurax don't understand. Resolve." Isaac's brow furrowed. "What exactly do you want in return?" he asked, his suspicion obvious in his voice. The stakes were high, and he wasn't about to gamble Earth's future on an unknown ally without understanding the price. Shrakthar's voice remained calm, almost eerily so. "Nothing, for now. Your fight is our fight. Our resources are vast, our technology advanced. But it is your strategy that we find valuable. You are not like the others who have crumbled before the Zurax. You have the will to stand and fight. We wish to assist you, Commander, but know this. The Zurax are not easily defeated." Isaac glanced around the command room. Every officer, every technician held their breath. This was the last thing he expected, a mysterious force appearing just when Earth's position had seemed most dire. He thought about the Council who had barely given their support and the threat of annihilation hanging over Earth's future. Isaac knew this was not a decision to make lightly, but he had no choice. Their survival depended on bold choices, not on safe bets. "Why?" Isaac's voice was blunt, cutting through the heavy atmosphere. "Why help us? What's in it for you?" Shrak's reply was quick but cryptic. "There are things that are bigger than conquest, Commander. Things the Zurax would destroy if left unchecked. You and your species may be the key to stopping them, but we need your cooperation." Isaac hesitated. His gut told him to decline, to focus on the forces they had, however inadequate they might seem. But his mind knew better. The Zurax were closing in fast, and every second they wasted could mean the loss of Earth. He turned to Arik. "Have we traced the origin of this transmission?" Isaac asked, his eyes still locked on the screen, a slight edge of distrust creeping into his voice. Arik typed quickly, his fingers moving with practiced speed. "Yes, Commander. The signal matches no known patterns from the Zurax. It's legitimate, but that doesn't guarantee anything. We're dealing with unknown technology. Isaac's eyes flicked back to the image of the sovereign ship. Something about its sleek, ominous form made the hairs on his neck stand up. But then again, they didn't have the luxury of refusing help. Earth was teetering on the edge. "All right, Thar," Isaac said, his voice calm but firm. "We'll accept your offer, for now. But if you betray us, it'll be the last mistake you make." The response came swiftly. "Understood, Commander. We'll provide you with tactical intelligence, and our fleet will join yours in the upcoming strike. But remember, Commander, you must make the first move. We will not engage unless you lead." Isaac's mind churned with the implications. A new ally, yes, but one shrouded in mystery. The last thing he needed was another unknown factor on the field, but he knew he couldn't afford to turn away help. The Zurax were relentless, and Earth's resources were limited. He could only pray that this mysterious ally wasn't playing their own game at his expense before. "I'll take it from here," Isaac said, cutting the transmission short. "Let's see what this sovereign has to offer. We're not waiting much longer for the Zurax." The room was heavy with tension, the quiet buzz of the command center intensifying. Isaac stood still for a moment, his mind mapping out the coming battle, feeling the weight of his decision settle in. Allies, enemies, it was all the same in war. Trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered, and Isaac wasn't sure he was ready to trust the sovereign. But in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was survival. "General Carver, status on the fleet?" Isaac asked, his voice cutting through the tension. "We're assembling for the strike," Carver replied, voice grim. "But we'll need to work quickly. The Zurax are preparing their second wave." Isaac's jaw clenched. The timing had to be perfect, or they would be overwhelmed. "Deploy the fleet. Activate the first strike protocols. The Zurax will not know what hit them." As the officers began their final preparations, Isaac turned back to the massive map displayed before him, watching the movements of both Earth's and the Zurax's forces. His mind worked quickly, planning the best approach, the best strike. This was it. The moment when Earth would either stand or fall. He could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him, but his resolve never wavered. Earth would survive, and if the Sovereign truly wanted to help, they would have to prove it. Isaac glanced at the monitor one last time, watching the silhouette of the Sovereign ship silently observing. Whatever game they were playing, Isaac would be ready. The battle for Earth was far from over, but now, for better or worse, it had become a game with more players than before. "Ready the cloaking systems. Once we're in range, we strike fast and disappear." Isaac's voice was sharp, his command cutting through the quiet tension of the operations room. The cold light of the laser plasma displays reflected off his face as he stared at the Zurax installations scattered across the outer rim of their fleet. Earth's mission was about to take a turn into the shadows, and Isaac wasn't about to let their advantage slip away. Arik Reth stood nearby, fingers flying over his console. "Cloak activated. We'll be invisible once we pass the Zurax perimeter. The Sovereign ships are in position. Their technology is better suited for this stealth operation." Isaac nodded without looking away from the display. His thoughts were already ahead, tracking the path of their assault. The Zurax were unaware of the covert operation. Their focus was still on the direct attack they were planning to launch. This would be Earth's chance to weaken them from within. "Deploy the stealth fleet," Isaac ordered, his gaze flickering toward the large map of the galaxy that loomed before him. "We strike their power grid first. Without it, they'll have no ability to retaliate." The tension in the room heightened as the stealth ships, coated in the advanced technology of the Sovereign, slid silently into position. They moved like shadows, blending into the emptiness of space. The Zurax remained oblivious, their massive ships grinding closer to the point of no return. Isaac knew they had only minutes before the Zurax realized their vulnerability. "Status report on the Sovereign fleet," Isaac asked, his eyes scanning the swirling data. "They've positioned themselves at the edge of the fleet's line," Arik replied. "They'll be in range once the first wave is executed." Isaac's fingers tapped the surface of the table, his mind racing through contingencies. The mission was risky, too risky for comfort, but he had no choice. The Zurax were too powerful to face head-on. This covert strike was their best chance to gain an edge. Isaac turned his attention back to the laser plasma displays, watching as the small cloaked ships moved into position. Their mission was to disable the core reactors of the Zurax, creating chaos and confusion among the enemy ranks. A few well-placed hits, and their technological advantage would evaporate. A soft chime interrupted the tension. "We're in position, Commander," Eric reported, his voice steady, but with the hint of something darker beneath it. "We breached the perimeter. First target in sight." Isaac's expression hardened. "Take it out. Make it quick. We don't have time for any mistakes." The moment he spoke, the operation began. Small bursts of energy pulsed from the cloaked ships, silently impacting their first target, a massive Zurax energy reactor. The explosion was contained but devastating. The energy shield flickered, and a vast ripple of disruption surged outward, cascading over the Zurax fleet. Isaac could feel the force of it, even from here. The first wave had struck. "Target disabled, Commander," Arik said. "Moving to the second reactor." Isaac's lips thinned into a tight line. "Good. Keep moving. Don't give them time to react." But as the ships moved deeper into the heart of the Zurax formation, Isaac's mind sharpened. He had expected this. He had planned for it. But that didn't make the success any less precarious. Their cover was still intact, but the clock was ticking. The longer they stayed in Zurax territory, the more likely they would be detected. A single misstep, and their advantage would evaporate. "Commander," Carver spoke from across the room, his voice low and almost too calm. "We've intercepted a transmission from the Zurax. It's encrypted, but there's something strange. The message mentions something about a faction within and questioning the command. They're arguing among themselves." Isaac's gaze snapped to Carver. A rift within the Zurax ranks? That was the first real sign of weakness they had seen. It was something Isaac had hoped for, but never expected. He knew that the Zurax were ruthless, but the idea of internal dissent was unexpected. "Keep monitoring that," Isaac said quickly. "We use it, when the time comes." Arik's voice broke through the murmur of the room. "Second reactor down, Commander. We've disabled their power grid." Isaac took a slow breath. "Good. Fall back to the rendezvous point. Make sure they don't trace us back." As Earth's fleet retreated into the cloak of invisibility, Isaac's mind didn't rest. The Zurax were now crippled, unable to use their advanced weaponry or communication systems. But something gnawed at the back of Isaac's mind. The Sovereign had helped them. There was no doubt about that. But how much could they trust their new ally? Every move Isaac made now was calculated not just to defeat the Zurax, but to secure Earth's future without being manipulated. The tension in the room was palpable as the stealth ships continued their evasive maneuvers. Isaac walked across the room, his boots clicking on the metal floor, and stopped in front of the display. Earth had made progress, but they weren't out of danger yet. If the Zurax regrouped and adapted to their losses, this would only delay the inevitable. Isaac knew they had to keep pushing, whatever it took. "Report," Isaac said, his eyes locked on the map. The Sovereign's assistance had been a calculated risk, but Isaac wasn't about to let it lead them into a trap. If they were to survive, Earth needed more than just a temporary advantage. They needed allies they could trust. Arik glanced at him before speaking. "The Sovereign's fleet is already moving. They're shadowing us, ensuring the Zurax don't detect our retreat." Isaac nodded, his thoughts briefly flickering back to the cryptic conversation with the Sovereign leader, Zurax. Something didn't sit right. He knew the Sovereign was playing a long game, but Isaac's focus had to be on Earth's survival. They couldn't afford to question their allies too deeply. Not yet. But he wouldn't forget what he had learned about the internal rift within the Zurax forces. "Keep monitoring the Sovereign," Isaac ordered. "We'll keep the pressure on, but we can't afford to be blindsided." The atmosphere in the command room was thick with tension, but Isaac's mind sharpened. This was a moment of opportunity, and he would seize it. Earth had made its first significant strike, but the game was far from over. The Zurax were strong, relentless even, but they had shown their first crack. Isaac couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. If the Zurax were truly divided, the battle could be won by Earth. "Launch the strike now." Isaac's command cut through the air with the force of a thunderclap. The tension in the command room, thick and palpable, seemed to pulse with the urgency of the moment. The final assault was about to begin. Earth's forces, bolstered by the Sovereign's unexpected aid, were now in position for the most critical strike of the war. Isaac stood at the helm, his hands steady despite the weight of the decision that loomed over him. The Zurax had been relentless, their forces closing in on Earth with each passing day. But now the tide had shifted. Earth had struck back with everything it had, but the last hurdle remained. The Zurax command ship. It was the heart of their empire, the anchor of their strength. Destroy it, and the rest of their fleet would collapse. "We've got them," General Carver's voice was grim but confident. "The Zurax are spread thin, their ships in disarray. We can break them with a single blow." Isaac's gaze shifted to the map before him, his mind calculating the trajectory of their final strike. The Sovereign fleet, stealthy and precise, had played its part, ensuring the Zurax were caught off guard. Now it was Earth's turn to deliver the decisive blow. "Have the interceptors locked on target," Isaac ordered, his voice unwavering. "We hit their command ship with everything we have. No hesitation." The first wave of missiles launched, streaking across the sky like fiery comets. Isaac watched the screens, his breath steady. The target was set, the calculation perfect. As the missiles neared, the Zurax command ship came into focus, its massive form looming against the black void of space. The ship, a symbol of their dominance, would soon be nothing more than a smoldering wreckage. Isaac's pulse quickened as the countdown began. The Zurax were momentarily distracted, their communications still scrambled from Earth's previous counterstrikes. It was the perfect opportunity. As the missiles impacted the Zurax ship, the screen exploded with light, vibrant flashes of red and orange as the ship's shields faltered, then shattered. "Direct hit," Arakhreth called out, his voice filled with the relief of a battle long fought. "We've breached their core. The ship is taking heavy damage." Isaac's chest tightened, but there was no room for celebration. He was a warrior, and warriors did not revel in the destruction they caused. Instead, he focused on the next move, his mind already calculating their next steps. The Zurax fleet, though disoriented, was regrouping. They were far from finished. Isaac knew their commanders would not go down without a fight. He turned to General Carver, his gaze steely. "Prepare for their counterattack. We need to press the advantage while they're vulnerable." As the seconds ticked by, the Zurax command ship began to crumble, the energy surges from Earth's assault ripping through its defenses. The towering structure started to disintegrate, flames spewing from its hull, cascading across the dark canvas of space. Isaac allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The Zurax had been broken. The command ship, the heart of their fleet, was no longer a threat. But Isaac's mind didn't linger on victory. Instead, he focused on the wider battle. The Zurax were regrouping, their defenses still intact in places. They had one final move to make, and Isaac wouldn't let them recover. Not yet. "Send in the second wave. Hit their remaining warships. We can't let them rally," Isaac commanded, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. He could already hear the hum of the next wave of ships being prepared for launch, the engines firing up with the raw power of Earth's resistance. The final wave of interceptors and bombers tore through the vastness of space. Their target, the remaining Zurax warships, desperate to regroup, but unable to match the speed and precision of Earth's coordinated attack. Isaac stood firm, his hands clenched, his mind sharp. Each decision was calculated. Every move was part of the grand strategy to ensure Earth's survival. "Deploy the EMP on the remaining Zurax flagship," Isaac ordered, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Disrupt their communication systems. Let them see how Earth fights back." The EMP pulse fired across the void, slamming into the Zurax flagship, its powerful systems flickering and dying. For a moment, the Zurax flagship stood still, vulnerable. Earth's forces closed in. Then Isaac's thoughts turned inward. The battle was nearing its end, but there was still a decision to make. Victory was within their grasp, but should they push for complete annihilation of the Zurax? Or was it time to open the door to peace? The Zurax had been relentless, but their defeat now seemed certain. Their fleet was shattering, their leadership broken. And yet Isaac knew the cost of this victory. How many lives had been lost? How many systems ravaged by the war? The galaxy was not the same place it had been when Earth had first entered the fight. "General, status on the remaining fleet?" Isaac asked, his voice low, betraying none of the internal conflict he felt. "They're faltering, Commander," Carver replied, his voice unwavering. "The flagship is done. The rest of their forces are in disarray. This is our moment." Isaac exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of his command settle onto his shoulders. This was it, the final decision. "Initiate peace talks," Isaac said, his voice firm. "Contact the Zurax. If they wish to surrender, we'll hear them out. But if they fight, we'll finish this now." The room fell silent for a moment. The tension was palpable, the gravity of Isaac's decision hanging heavy in the air. The war had claimed its toll, but Isaac knew peace was the only way forward. The Zurax had fallen, but the cost of that victory was not lost on Isaac. He would do what needed to be done to ensure Earth's survival, but the consequences would stay with him forever. As the room watched, the last of the Zurax fleet fell apart, their once feared ships burning in space. Isaac knew that this battle would go down in history as a defining moment, but the next challenge awaited. Peace was now the goal. The galaxy had been forever changed, and Isaac Vane had ensured that Earth would never again be overlooked. "We did it," Isaac Vane said, his voice carrying the weight of both triumph and the lingering uncertainty of what had come before. The battle was over. The Zurax had been shattered, their command ship now nothing more than debris drifting in the void. The vast expanse of space, once an ominous backdrop to Earth's struggle, now seemed to promise something different. Isaac stood by the viewport, watching as Earth's bright blue and green surface floated serenely below, untouched by the destruction that had ravaged the galaxy. Isaac's mind was still processing the enormity of their victory, but the war, though won, had taken its toll. The sacrifices made, the lives lost. It was all too much to simply celebrate. He was no stranger to leadership, but this victory with all its weight, was different. It was Earth's first true step onto the galactic stage, and it had come at a price. Reth approached, his face set in a grim expression that matched Isaac's own. "We've lost so many, but we've won. The Council won't be able to deny us now." Isaac didn't respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed on Earth, the quiet beauty of it stark against the horrors of war. But he could feel the change. The Galactic Council was already in the process of sending a formal acknowledgement of Earth's victory, and the peace talks would begin. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about Earth's place in the galaxy, about rewriting the rules of a universe that had long ignored humanity's potential. "We'll rebuild," Isaac said finally, his voice steady, though his mind churned with the complexity of their next steps. The Council's support was a key factor in securing the future, but Isaac knew that peace wouldn't come easily. Not when so many factions, Zurax or otherwise, still lurked in the shadows, ready to strike at the first sign of weakness. Arik took a step forward, his hand resting lightly on Isaac's shoulder. "You did it. You led us through this. Whatever happens next, you've already changed everything." Isaac nodded, but the weight of the moment was heavy. As much as Earth had won, there was no escaping the knowledge that the galaxy would never be the same. "It's not over," Isaac replied, his eyes narrowing as he thought about the future. "We've won the battle. Now we build. But we need to ensure this doesn't become a cycle of conquest again. We need to show the galaxy that Earth will not just be a pawn." The voice of Counselor Theras Vire interrupted his thoughts. "Commander Vane, we've received confirmation from the Galactic Council. They're preparing to formally recognize Earth as a new galactic power." Theras's tone was measured, but there was a subtle tremor beneath it. The implications of what had just transpired were still settling across the galaxy, and even the seasoned counselor couldn't mask his awe. Isaac turned slowly, his gaze meeting Vare's. "And the peace talks?" "Starting immediately," Theras replied, his voice growing firmer. "You'll be the representative. Earth will sit at the table with the most powerful species in the galaxy. A new era begins today, Commander." Isaac's mind raced. Sitting at that table meant power, but it also meant responsibility. Could they ensure Earth's security in a galaxy so steeped in its own conflicts? Could they maintain peace, or would they be drawn into more wars? The questions burned in his mind, but the answers were elusive. The doors to the command room opened, and General Neil Carver entered, flanked by his officers. "Sir, the fleet is preparing for the formal meeting with the Council. The Zurax have fully retreated. We have an opening." Isaac turned back to the viewport, the weight of command sinking deeper into his bones. The galaxy had never seen a power like Earth, had never seen humanity stand up to forces far greater than themselves and emerge victorious. Isaac knew that Earth's influence would grow, but the true test lay ahead. How would humanity shape the future? "Get the fleet in position," Isaac said, his voice calm but firm. "The Council needs to see that Earth stands not only with strength, but with resolve for peace." As the command room hummed with activity, Isaac's thoughts returned to the larger picture. The victory had been necessary, but the road ahead was uncharted. With Earth's place secured, would humanity become a leader in the galaxy, or simply another power to be manipulated? Could Earth keep its integrity intact, or would it fall into the same traps as every other empire before it? The laser plasma displays flickered as information streamed in, updates from various sectors, data from the peace talks beginning to take shape. Isaac stood still, eyes scanning the data, but his mind was elsewhere. The Zurax had learned the hard way that Earth would not back down. But this was something more than just war. This was diplomacy, trust, and the future of a species now thrust into the galactic spotlight. "We've made it this far," Isaac muttered under his breath, the weight of his words sinking in. "Now we have to make sure it wasn't in vain." His hand hovered over the console, and the display shifted. The sovereign fleet, still present but now on standby, was ready for whatever came next. The galaxy watched, waiting for Earth to make its move. Isaac exhaled slowly, his fingers moving to press the final command. The screen flashed with the first message of peace, a formal communique from the Zurax. They were asking for terms. Earth had proven its might, but now the true test was how humanity would wield its newfound power. Would they destroy their enemies completely, or would they lead with the hope of a better future? Isaac's fingers hovered over the display for a moment longer before he made his decision. He was a soldier, yes, but a leader first. Humanity had risen from nothing to stand among the stars. Now it was time to set the course for a galaxy that was forever changed. The message was simple. Peace has been won. The future begins now. As Isaac looked out at the Earth below, he knew that the path ahead would be difficult. The Zurax had fallen, but other threats still loomed. Peace was fragile, and every alliance would need to be tested. But for now, Earth stood as a beacon in the darkness, a force to be reckoned with. Isaac Vane's journey had come full circle, from the depths of uncertainty to the triumph of survival, and finally, to the long road of peace. Earth was no longer a pawn in the galactic game. It was a player. And with that, Isaac turned away from the window, ready for what came next.